Before tonight's story begins, we would like to take a quiet moment to thank every one of you who continues to return to this channel, listen to these stories, and stay with our characters through every heartbreak, secret, and second chance. Your support, your comments, and every moment you spend here mean more than you may realize. Because of you, these stories of lonely Alpha Kings, overlooked Omegas, unexpected families, and love found in the most unlikely places continue to have a home. Tonight's story begins in the middle of a brutal winter, with one young Omega, 3 freezing wolf pups, and a single blanket she could barely afford to give away. She thought she was simply saving 3 helpless creatures from the cold. She had no idea their father was already searching for them, and she certainly did not know that before sunrise, the Alpha King himself would find her holding his children beneath the snow. Elena Vale did not know the 3 dying wolf pups beneath the bridge were princes. She only knew she had 1 blanket, 4 freezing bodies, and enough warmth to save either herself or them. The winter storm had swallowed White Pine Pass before sunset. Snow moved sideways through the narrow mountain road, hissing against pine trunks and covering wagon tracks almost as soon as they appeared. The sky had turned the color of old iron, and the wind carried the sharp scent of frozen cedar, wet stone, and distant chimney smoke. Elena pulled her worn brown cloak tighter around her shoulders and hurried toward the abandoned border station she called home. Inside her basket were 2 bruised apples, half a loaf of yesterday's bread, a jar of lamp oil, and exactly 3 copper coins. It had been a good day. By Elena's standards, she had almost reached the old stone bridge when she heard something beneath the wind. A tiny sound. Not quite a howl. Not quite a cry. Elena stopped. The sensible part of her mind reminded her that darkness was falling, the storm was worsening, and she had already lost feeling in 2 toes. Then the sound came again, softer this time. "Oh, no," she whispered. She already knew she was going to investigate. Elena had never been particularly skilled at ignoring creatures in trouble. Years earlier, she had once carried an injured goose 3 miles home. The goose had thanked her by biting her repeatedly. She still considered the rescue successful. Carefully, Elena climbed down the snowy embankment. Beneath the bridge, half hidden behind the broken remains of a small traveling cart, 3 wolf pups huddled together. Her breath caught. They were beautiful and freezing. The oldest was dark gray, with pale markings around his eyes. The second had reddish-brown fur and 1 white paw. The smallest was almost entirely silver. None of them moved when Elena approached. "Oh, babies." Her voice softened immediately. She dropped to her knees. The smallest pup's breathing was frighteningly shallow. Elena slipped off her gloves and pressed trembling fingers against his chest. A heartbeat. Weak. Still there. "All right," she murmured. "Nobody is dying tonight." The oldest pup opened 1 golden eye. It watched her with an intelligence that felt strangely human. Elena frowned. "You look like you're judging me." The pup blinked. "That's fair. I'm talking to wolves." She gathered them carefully into her arms. By the time she reached the abandoned station, snow had soaked through her boots. The room inside was barely warmer than outside. A weak fire struggled in the stone hearth, and Elena had enough dry wood for perhaps 2 hours. She spread her only blanket across the floor. For 1 painful second, she stared at it. Her mother had sewn it. It was the last thing Elena owned that still smelled faintly, impossibly, of home. Then, the smallest pup whimpered. Elena did not hesitate again. She wrapped all 3 inside the blanket. The reddish pup immediately pushed his nose toward her breadbasket. Elena stared. "You are half frozen." The little nose moved closer. "You cannot possibly be hungry." A second head appeared. Then a third. Elena sighed. "Fine, 1 bite each." Far beyond the station, somewhere inside the storm, a massive black wolf suddenly stopped running. 3 familiar scents reached him. His sons. Alive. Then another scent touched the wind. Pear blossom. Warm milk. Cedar smoke. The Alpha King's wolf went perfectly still. Something ancient stirred beneath his ribs. By dawn, Kael Draven found the ruined station. He found his 3 sons alive beneath a faded blue blanket. He found an unconscious Omega curled around them, her body shielding them from the cold. Relief nearly brought him to his knees. Then Kael saw the silver symbol stitched into the blanket's corner. A crescent moon surrounded by 5 stars. His blood turned colder than the snow. Mooncrest, a bloodline that had supposedly been dead for 23 years. Elena slowly opened her eyes. She saw the enormous black wolf standing before her and immediately pulled the pups closer. "Don't come any closer," she whispered. "They've had a terrible night." Inside Kael's mind, his wolf answered with one impossible word: Métis. When Elena woke again, the first thing she noticed was warmth. Not much, just enough to make her fingers ache as feeling slowly returned. The second thing she noticed was that something small and warm was breathing against her neck. Elena opened her eyes. Then she stopped breathing. 3 little boys were sleeping beneath her blanket. Not wolf pups. Boys. The oldest looked about 9, with dark hair falling across his forehead and a stubborn crease between his brows even while he slept. The second had reddish-brown hair and one sock missing. The smallest, perhaps 5, had curled himself against Elena's side with one fist wrapped around the front of her dress. Elena stared at them, then at the empty room, then back at the boys. No. The smallest boy made a sleepy sound and moved closer. Elena swallowed. No, no, no. N. She lifted one corner of the blanket. 3 boys. Definitely 3 boys. You were wolves. The reddish-haired child opened one eye. We know. Elena nearly fell backward. He yawned. You talk. So do you. That is not the surprising part. The boy seemed to consider that. Then he nodded. Fair. Before Elena could decide whether she had frozen hard enough to start imagining conversations, heavy footsteps sounded outside. Every child woke instantly. The oldest sat up first. His expression sharpened. Father. Something in the word changed the room. The door opened. A tall man stepped inside, carrying cold air and the scent of snow-covered pine. Elena recognized the scent before she recognized him. Her chest tightened strangely. He wore a dark coat with no royal crest, black gloves, and boots covered in frozen mud. His hair was damp from melting snow, and his face looked carved from exhaustion and restraint. But his eyes were unmistakable. Amber. The same eyes as the enormous black wolf. Elena slowly looked toward the door, then toward him, then back toward the door. You. Kael paused. That sounded accusatory. You were the wolf. The reddish-haired boy covered his mouth. The oldest elbowed him. Kael's jaw tightened slightly. Yes. Elena stared at him for several long seconds. Then, she pointed at the 3 children. And they were wolves. Yes. Her finger moved back toward him. And you are their father. Yes. Elena closed her eyes. Wonderful. Finn grinned. I like her. Kael gave him a look. Finn immediately became very interested in the floor. Elena rubbed both hands over her face. When she lowered them again, her gaze sharpened. You lost 3 children in a blizzard? Silence. Kael, Alpha King of 7 packs, had faced rebellions with less discomfort. They were traveling under guard. That was not my question. Rowan's mouth twitched. Kael noticed. Elena did not. The escort was attacked, Kael said quietly. Her irritation softened. Only slightly. Are they hurt? No. Are you sure? Yes. She immediately began checking anyway. Milo had a red patch near his wrist. Finn had a scratch along his knee. Rowan insisted he was fine until Elena found bruising beneath his sleeve. Kael watched in silence. She touched them gently, spoke softly, and never once asked what they were worth. That unsettled him. Most people changed around royal children. Elena had not. To her, they were still simply cold boys who needed food. Unfortunately, Elena had very little food. She set the remaining bread on the table. Finn looked at it with reverence. Elena divided it into 4 pieces. Kael noticed immediately. There are 5 of us. I can count. You did not take a piece. I'm not hungry. Her stomach growled. All 3 boys looked at her. Elena glared downward. Traitor. Kael almost smiled. Almost. He reached into his coat and placed a wrapped packet on the table. Dried meat, cheese, and 2 small honey cakes. Finn gasped. You had food? Kael lifted one brow. I was searching for you. That is not an answer. Elena coughed to hide a laugh. Kael heard it. Something warm moved beneath his ribs. His wolf lifted its head. Matey. Kael ignored him. For now. Later, while the boys ate, his attention returned to the faded blue blanket. The silver stitching was partly hidden beneath Milo's foot. Kael crouched beside it. "Where did you get this?" Elena glanced over. "My mother made it." "Her name?" She hesitated. "Seraphine Vale." Kael's hand stopped. "Val, not Mooncrest." Yet the crest beneath his fingers was unmistakable. A crescent. 5 stars. A symbol erased from palace walls 23 years ago. Elena noticed the change in his expression. "What?" Kael looked up. Her scent drifted toward him again. Pear blossom, warm milk, cedar smoke. His wolf went very still. "Nothing," he said. It was the first lie he told her, and he already disliked the taste of it. A knock sounded at the door. 3 armed men entered and immediately bowed. "Your Majesty." Elena froze. Her eyes moved slowly toward Kael, then toward the kneeling guards, then back to Kael. "You're the Alpha King?" Finn brightened. "He does that." Kael closed his eyes. For the first time that morning, Elena smiled. And somehow, with snow still falling outside and an impossible crest hidden beneath her only blanket, Kael found himself thinking that he wanted to hear that sound again. For several seconds, Elena could only stare. The guards remained on one knee near the doorway, snow melting from their dark cloaks onto the old wooden floor. Kael stood between them and the fire. Calm, silent. Very clearly not the ordinary father Elena had just accused of losing 3 children in a blizzard. Her face slowly warmed. "You're the Alpha King." Kael's amber eyes rested on hers. "Yes." Elena looked toward the boys. Rowan had suddenly become fascinated by the edge of the blanket. Milo hid half his face against her arm. Finn, unfortunately, looked delighted. Elena pointed at Kael. "You let me lecture you." Kael's mouth twitched. "I did not realize I had a choice." Finn made a tiny choking sound. Rowan elbowed him again. Elena closed her eyes. Wonderful. She had survived a snowstorm, rescued 3 royal princes, accused their father of irresponsible parenting, and apparently shared breakfast with the most powerful alpha in the north while wearing 1 wool sock. She looked down. Yes, 1 sock. The other had disappeared sometime during the night. Of course it had. When she opened her eyes again, Kael was watching her with an expression suspiciously close to amusement. "Do not laugh." "I wasn't. You were thinking about it." "That is difficult to prove." Finn finally lost the battle and laughed into both hands. The sound loosened something inside the room. Even Elena smiled. Only for a moment. Then reality returned. She quickly tried to stand. Milo immediately clung harder. "Don't go." Elena softened. "I'm only standing up, sweetheart." His small fingers remained wrapped around her sleeve. Kael noticed. So did Rowan. The oldest boy lowered his eyes, pretending not to care, but his hand had settled on the edge of Elena's blanket as if he was afraid someone might take that away too. Kael's chest tightened. He had spent years giving his sons guards, tutors, physicians, warm rooms, polished halls, everything a prince could need. Yet somehow, in one terrible night, this unknown Omega had given them something the palace could not. Safety without ceremony. Warmth without expectation. Kael turned toward the guards. "Prepare the horses." Elena looked at him. "They shouldn't ride yet." One guard visibly stiffened. Kael did not. "Why?" "They're exhausted." Milo's breathing is better, but the cold settled deep. Rowan has bruising along his ribs, and Finn needs something warm before he goes anywhere. Finn nodded solemnly. "Especially Finn." Elena stared at him. "You are remarkably committed to eating." "I nearly died." "You asked for bread before you could feel your paws." "That was survival." Kael looked away before Elena could catch the smile this time. She did anyway. "There," she said. His gaze returned to her. "There what?" "You smiled." "I did not." All 3 boys spoke at once. "You did." Kael looked betrayed by his own children. For the first time since the attack, Rowan laughed. It was quiet, brief, but Kael heard it. And for that alone, he found himself wanting Elena near them a little longer. After another hour, the storm weakened. Kael's men brought blankets, food, and warm water from a nearby patrol station. Elena expected them to gather the princes and leave. Instead, Kael approached her while she repaired the torn seam of Milo's borrowed coat. "You saved my sons." Her fingers slowed. "They needed help. That does not make what you did small." Elena looked down. Praise still made her uncomfortable, especially from men with crowns. Kael placed a small leather pouch beside her. The weight of the coins inside was obvious. Elena did not touch it. No. His brows drew together. No? I don't want payment. It is not payment. It looks extremely much like payment. It is gratitude. She pushed the pouch gently back toward him. If you want to thank me, repair the bridge. Kael went still. The bridge? Half the railing is broken. The road disappears beneath snow after dark. Someone else could fall there. She nodded toward the princes. Someone else might not be lucky enough to have an overly hungry child making noise beneath it. Finn looked proud. Kael studied Elena for a long moment. She had almost frozen to death. Her cottage roof leaked. Her boots were worn thin. She had 3 copper coins to her name, and she had just refused enough gold to change her life because she wanted a bridge repaired for strangers. His wolf stirred. Not possessive this time. Something quieter. Admiration. By noon, the royal party was ready to leave. Milo cried first. Elena crouched beside him. You're going home. I want you to come. Her heart pinched. You have your father. Milo looked toward Kael. Then back at Elena. I can have both. Kael heard that. Unfortunately, so did everyone else. Finn grinned. Rowan looked deeply interested in his boots. Elena's cheeks turned pink. Kael cleared his throat. Milo. What? Nothing. There was absolutely nothing a king could safely say. Eventually, Rowan stepped toward Elena. He pressed a small silver button into her palm. It had fallen from his coat during the storm. So you remember us. Elena closed her fingers around it. As if the 3 of you were easy to forget. Finn hugged her without warning. Milo joined. Rowan hesitated. Then quietly did the same. Kael stood a few feet away, watching Elena disappear beneath 3 small princes. Her scent drifted toward him. Pear blossom, worm milk, home. His wolf gave a low, satisfied rumble. Kael ignored it. Mostly. When the royal party finally disappeared beyond the snowy road, Elena returned to the abandoned station. The silence felt different now. Too large. She placed Rowan's button beside the lamp. Then, she folded her mother's blanket carefully. For reasons she did not understand, she found herself remembering amber eyes and a smile Kael had denied having. Outside, dusk settled over White Pine Pass. Elena never noticed the shadow moving behind the station. She only heard glass break. By the time she reached the main room, drawers had been pulled open. Her basket had been thrown aside. Nothing valuable was missing. Not her coins. Not her food. Not even the silver button. Only one thing had been searched for. Elena looked toward the chair. Her blood went cold. Someone had come for the blanket. Kael knew something was wrong before the messenger finished speaking. The report had arrived at Frostmere Palace just after sunset, while the last light faded behind the snow-covered towers. A break-in at White Pine Pass. No money taken. No food taken. Only one room searched. Only one object disturbed. The blanket. Kael stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the stone floor. Around the council table, conversation stopped. Lord Garrick Voss lifted his gray eyes. Your Majesty? Kael did not answer. His wolf was already awake beneath his skin. Restless. Furious. And beneath the anger was something Kael disliked even more. Fear. Not for the blanket. For Elena. He left before the council could ask another question. By the time the moon rose, a massive black wolf was running north through the forest. Again, Kael told himself it was practical. Elena had saved his sons. Someone had targeted an object connected to Mooncrest. She was now a possible witness. Protecting her was simply responsible. His wolf gave a low sound inside him. Liar. Kael ran faster. At White Pine, Elena had already repaired the broken window badly. Very badly. A folded towel had been nailed across the opening. It flapped every time the wind blew. Elena stood on a chair, trying to secure one corner when the front door opened. She jumped. The hammer slipped from her hand. Kael caught it before it hit the floor. Elena stared down at him. He had returned in human form this time, wearing a plain dark coat, snow still melting along his shoulders. You. Kael looked at the chair beneath her. You seem disappointed. I'm deciding whether you knocked. I did. I did not hear you. You were attacking architecture. Elena glanced at the towel covering the window. It was winning. For one dangerous second, Kael nearly laughed. Then he saw her hand. A narrow cut crossed her palm. His expression changed instantly. What happened? Elena looked down. Oh, that. Kael stepped closer. That is generally what people mean when they ask about blood. It's a scratch. Who did it? The glass. Kael's wolf settled slightly. Only slightly. Elena noticed his shoulders loosen. Her eyes softened. You thought someone hurt me? No. The answer came too quickly. Elena lifted one brow. Kael looked away. She smiled. There it is. What? That thing you do when you're pretending not to care. Kael's gaze returned to her. I do not pretend. Your Majesty, you lied about being a king for almost an entire morning. I omitted information. That sounds much more royal. He took her injured hand before she could protest. His touch was careful. Warm. The instant his thumb brushed her wrist, a quiet heat traveled beneath Elena's skin. She stopped speaking. Kael felt it too. Her scent deepened. Pear blossom after rain. His wolf moved closer beneath his ribs. Mate. Kael released her hand slowly. Too slowly. Elena noticed. Neither mentioned it. Instead, Kael looked around the small room. Drawers had been opened. Her sewing basket had been emptied. A chair lay broken near the wall. The faded blue blanket rested folded beside Elena. Safe. You're coming to Frostmere. Elena blinked. No. Kael turned. No? You have a strange relationship with that word. You are not safe here. I have lived here safely for years. Someone broke into your home. Yes. And now I have a towel for a window. That is not reassuring. It is temporary. It is absurd. Elena folded her arms. You cannot simply order me into your palace. Kael almost said, I can. The words reached his tongue. Then he remembered the woman who had given away her only warmth instead of abandoning 3 helpless pups. Elena would not respond to power. So he tried something unfamiliar. Honesty. My sons have asked about you every day. Her expression softened immediately. Kael continued. Milo refuses to sleep with the blanket the nurse gave him because it does not smell like yours. Elena's mouth trembled. Finn? Has asked whether you make honey bread. She laughed softly. And Rowan? Kael paused. He pretends not to ask. That hurt more than Elena expected. She lowered her eyes. Kael watched her. Then, before caution could stop him, he added quietly. They sleep badly without you. Elena looked up. Kael should have stopped there. He did not. So do I. Silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. Kael's face went still. Elena's cheeks slowly turned pink. You sleep badly? I have for years. That is not what you meant. No. Another silence. This one warmer. Elena looked at the floor. Kael looked toward the broken window. His wolf was unbearably pleased. Eventually, Elena sighed. I'll come until we know who did this. Kael nodded. Relief moved through him so quickly it almost embarrassed him. The next afternoon, Frostmere Palace appeared beyond the snow-covered hills. Dark stone towers rose beneath a pale winter sky, banners snapping above walls wide enough to hold a village. Elena became very quiet. Kael noticed. You can still change your mind. She glanced at him. Are Alpha Kings usually this bad at persuading people? Only one person. Comforting. The palace gates opened. Servants gathered. Guards bowed. And before Elena could take 3 steps into the courtyard, Milo came running. Elena! He crashed into her legs. Finn followed. Then Rowan, trying very hard to walk with dignity before giving up and joining them. Elena laughed as all 3 surrounded her. Kael stopped several feet away. For the first time in years, the palace courtyard sounded like something other than duty. It sounded like home. Then Finn looked at Elena's travel bag. Did you bring bread? Kael closed his eyes. Elena laughed harder. That night, long after the palace went quiet, Elena heard something scratch gently against her chamber door. Once. Then twice. She opened it. A massive black wolf sat in the hallway. Kael. His amber eyes met hers. Elena leaned against the doorframe. Aren't kings supposed to be in meetings? The wolf looked away. Elena smiled. Thought so. He remained exactly where he was. And for reasons she did not yet understand, neither of them wanted him to leave. Elena had expected palace life to feel grand. She had not expected it to include an Alpha King sitting outside her bedroom in wolf form like an enormous, stubborn guard dog. For nearly a minute, she simply stared at him. Kael's black fur caught the pale moonlight spilling through the corridor windows. Silver shimmered faintly along his neck and spine, and his amber eyes watched her with the solemn expression of a creature who had absolutely no intention of explaining himself. Elena folded her arms. "Are you lost?" One ear twitched. That was not a joke. Kael looked toward the end of the corridor. Elena followed his gaze. Empty. Then she looked back at him. "You know this is your palace." The wolf gave a quiet huff. Elena narrowed her eyes. Was that attitude? His tail moved once against the stone floor. She covered a smile. It was unfair how much less intimidating he became in this form. As a man, Kael carried a crown even when he was not wearing one. Every movement had control in it. Every silence felt measured. As a wolf, he occasionally looked offended by doors. Elena stepped aside. "If you are coming in, come in." Kael did not move. She sighed. "You scratched at my door." Still nothing. You cannot ask to be invited and then become mysterious about it. Finally, he rose. He was so large that Elena had to move farther back than expected. "That is excessive," she murmured. Kael walked past her. His scent followed him into the room. Snowy pine, cedar, warm amber smoke. The strange warmth beneath Elena's skin returned immediately. She ignored it. Mostly. Her room was small by palace standards, but enormous compared with white pine. A fire burned softly near the bed, and someone had placed fresh flowers on the table even though it was winter. Kael walked directly to the hearth and lay down. Elena started. "So this was your plan?" His eyes closed. Excellent conversation. No response. She sat near the fire and began repairing a tear in one of Milo's shirts. For several minutes, only the crackling flames and the quiet pull of thread through fabric filled the room. Elena found herself relaxing. Then she noticed Kael was watching her. Not intensely, just quietly. "What?" He blinked. "You were staring." His head lowered onto his paws. Elena smiled. "You deny things in every form, apparently." A faint sound came from the hallway. 3 small faces appeared around the door. Elena nearly laughed. Rowan tried to look innocent. Finn did not bother. Milo held a pillow. "What are you doing?" Finn pointed at Kael. "We knew he was here." Kael opened one eye. "How?" Milo answered proudly. "Father snores." The black wolf's head lifted. Elena pressed her lips together. Finn nodded seriously. "Only a little." Rowan whispered. "You are both going to regret this." 5 minutes later, all 3 boys were inside. Milo curled against Kael's side. Finn dropped his pillow directly onto the wolf's back. Rowan sat beside Elena and pretended this was entirely normal. Kael looked at her. Elena looked back. "You raised them." His eyes narrowed. "That means this is partly your fault." The tail thumped once. She laughed softly. Soon, Milo was asleep. Then Finn. Even Rowan's head began to droop. Elena pulled her old blue blanket over them. Kael watched her hands. The Mooncrest symbol disappeared beneath the fold. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Elena noticed. "You keep looking at it." Kael's ears shifted. "My blanket." He went still. Elena leaned back slightly. "Does it bother you?" Kael looked away. That answer was enough to make her curious, but not enough to frighten her. She reached down and brushed a patch of melting snow from his shoulder. Kael froze. So did Elena. Her fingers rested in thick black fur. Warmth moved from her palms straight into her chest. His wolf exhaled slowly. Then, to Elena's surprise, Kael leaned very slightly into her hand. Her expression softened. "You like that?" One amber eye opened. "You do." She scratched gently behind his ear. Kael's entire body went still. Finn, apparently not fully asleep, mumbled into his pillow. "Father likes ear scratches." Kael's head snapped toward him. Elena burst out laughing. Finn smiled without opening his eyes. "He does." If wolves could look humiliated, Kael managed it. "You are still a terrifying Alpha King," Elena whispered. His gaze returned to her. "Mostly." Her fingers moved through his fur again. Slowly, the tension in his enormous body disappeared. Elena did not know that Kael had not slept deeply in years. Not since war. Not since loss. Not since responsibility had turned every night into another battlefield. But beside her fire, surrounded by his sons and the scent of pear blossom, his breathing finally became slow, steady, peaceful. Elena watched him for a long moment. Something tender settled inside her. Not mate bond. Not destiny. Just concern. She pulled the blanket slightly farther over Milo, then over Finn, then Rowan. Finally, she laid the remaining corner across Kael's front paw. There, she whispered. Now everyone has some. Kael's eyes opened briefly. They met hers, and in that quiet moment, Elena felt something she had not expected inside a palace. Home. The next morning, Kael returned to human form before breakfast and behaved as though nothing unusual had happened. Elena watched him pour tea. You slept well. Kael did not look up. Did I? Yes. Interesting. You also let me scratch behind your ears. His hands stopped. Across the table, Finn began choking on toast. Kael slowly looked at his son. Finn immediately stared at the ceiling. Elena smiled into her cup. For the first time, Kael realized there were dangers in this kingdom no sword could protect him from, and he was beginning to enjoy every one of them. Kael had expected Elena's answer to satisfy his curiosity. Instead, it made the room feel colder. Seraphinvale, Elena repeated. The name seemed harmless enough. Soft. Ordinary. Kael knew better. He stood beside the breakfast table, one hand resting around his untouched cup of tea. Across from him, Elena was buttering toast for Milo, completely unaware that the name she had just spoken belonged to a woman who should not have existed. Not under that name. Not after Mooncrest fell. Kael kept his voice calm. Did your mother ever use another family name? Elena looked up. No. A pause. Why? Curiosity. Finn nearly dropped his spoon. You ask very serious curiosity questions. Kael gave him a look. Finn lowered his spoon, continuing breakfast. Elena smiled. That smile distracted Kael for one dangerous second. His wolf noticed immediately. Mate. Kael ignored him. Again. Later that morning, he entered the oldest section of Frostmere's royal archive alone. Dust hung in the pale light. Ancient shelves rose almost to the ceiling, carrying records older than several living packs. Kael found the Mooncrest files behind a locked iron cabinet. Most pages had been removed. Several names were blacked out, but one remained. Seraphine Mooncrest. Age 21, at the time of the purge. Status. Missing. Kael stared at the word. Not dead. Missing. His jaw tightened. Someone had changed history, and Elena had grown up carrying the consequences without ever knowing why. A soft sound behind him made Kael turn. Elena stood in the doorway. You disappear often. He closed the file. So I have been told. I thought kings were followed everywhere. Usually. Then you are either very good at escaping guards. She looked around the archive. Or very bad at being king. Kael's mouth moved. Elena pointed at him. That was another smile. You are becoming overly confident. You keep proving me right. He should have sent her away. Instead, he watched her walk between the shelves. Her fingertips skimmed the old book spines carefully. You like books? I like things that stay where you put them. Kael glanced at her. That sounds personal. It is. She pulled a volume free. Dust exploded directly into her face. Elena sneezed. Then again. Kael laughed. Actually laughed. Elena slowly lowered the book. His expression immediately returned to royal dignity. You laughed at me. I did not. You absolutely did. I may have exhaled. That was an entire laugh. Kael turned away. Behind him, Elena smiled. The warmth between them followed him long after she left. That afternoon, the palace gardens were covered in fresh snow. Elena had taken Milo outside because he insisted that snowmen in white pine were probably better than palace snowmen. Finn disagreed strongly. Rowan had declared the argument foolish, then joined them anyway. Kael watched from the stone terrace. Elena knelt beside the boys, her cheeks pink from the cold, her hair escaping beneath a knitted cap someone had found for her. For a moment, Kael forgot the archive, forgot Mooncrest, forgot Garrick. Then Captain Elias approached Elena, carrying a basket of winter apples. He said something Kael could not hear. Elena laughed. Kael's wolf lifted his head. Too close. Kael's eyes narrowed. Elias handed Elena an apple. Their fingers brushed. Absolutely too close. Kael was halfway down the terrace steps before he realized he had moved. Elena looked up. Your Majesty. Elias bowed. Kael barely noticed. What are you doing? Elena held up the apple. Receiving fruit. I can see that. She studied him. Are apples prohibited? No. Finn looked between them, then whispered loudly to Rowan, Father is jealous. Kael went perfectly still. Rowan covered his face. Milo looked delighted. Elena's lips twitched. Jealous? No. Finn nodded. He gets a line here. He pointed between his eyebrows. Kael slowly turned toward his son. Finn immediately hid behind Elena. She laughed. The sound softened something in Kael despite himself. He took the apple from her hand. Elena blinked. Kael inspected it. What are you doing? Checking it. For what? Brising. She stared at him. It's an apple. I am aware. Elena leaned closer. Her scent brushed across him. Pear blossom. Worm milk. Cedar smoke. Kael forgot the apple entirely. For one suspended heartbeat, neither moved. Elena's eyes lowered briefly to his mouth, then returned to his. The mate bond warmed beneath her skin. Kael felt his wolf go utterly still. He wanted to touch her. He did not. Not yet. Elena stepped back first. Her cheeks had turned pink for a reason that had nothing to do with winter. That evening, while helping Milo repair a crooked stuffed wolf, Elena began humming. The melody was quiet. Old. And information. Kael stopped outside the doorway. His blood ran cold. He knew that song. Every royal child once had. Until the crown banned it 23 years ago. It was the Mooncrest lament. Kael entered slowly. Elena. She looked up. Yes? Who taught you that song? Her needle paused. My mother. Kael's voice lowered. What was your mother's full name? Elena frowned. I told you. Seraphine Vale. Kael looked at her for a long moment. Then, at the faded blue blanket folded beside her chair. And finally, the truth settled into place. Seraphine Vale had never existed. Seraphine Mooncrest had, and Elena was her daughter. By the end of the week, Frostmere Palace had learned Elena's name. Unfortunately, most people had learned it through whispers. They followed her through corridors, slipped between servants carrying trays, and paused whenever she entered a room. The Omega from White Pine. The woman the princes adored. The woman the Alpha King kept visiting. The woman who had somehow arrived with one old blanket and disturbed an entire court. Elena tried not to notice. She had spent most of her life being underestimated. Still, palace judgment felt different. In White Pine, people ignored her. Here, they watched. At breakfast, two noblewomen stopped talking when she approached. At lunch, an older lord looked at her worn sleeves before asking whether border omegas were always so practical. Elena smiled politely. Only when surrounded by impractical people. Finn nearly inhaled his juice. Kael, seated at the head of the table, lowered his cup very slowly. Elena looked at him. What? His eyes held a warning. Not for her. For everyone else. That should not have warmed her chest. It did. Later, Elena escaped to the West Garden with Milo. He had decided that a snow-covered bench desperately needed a knitted scarf. Elena had stopped asking why. She was tying the scarf around the stone backrest when footsteps approached. A woman in a deep green winter cloak crossed the path. Lady Celestine Arden. Elena recognized her immediately. Everyone did. Beautiful. Educated. Daughter of one of the strongest northern alpha families. And, according to palace gossip, the woman the council wanted Kael to marry. Elena hated how quickly that information returned to her mind. Celestine stopped beside the bench. She looked at Milo, then at the scarf. Should I ask? No, Elena said. Celestine nodded. Wise. Milo beamed. Elena liked her immediately, which was inconvenient. You are Elena Vale. I've been told. Celestine smiled. The palace has been discussing you with impressive enthusiasm. That sounds much kinder than what I heard. It usually does. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence. Then Celestine lowered her voice. Be careful. Elena looked at her. Of what? Not me. That surprised her. Celestine glanced toward the palace. The council does not care whom Kael loves. They care whom he can be persuaded to marry. Elena's stomach tightened. I am not asking him for anything. I know. That seems to be the problem. Celestine's expression softened. Yes. That evening, Elena began packing. Not because she was afraid. Because she was tired of being the reason Kael walked into rooms already angry. She folded 2 dresses. Her sewing kit. Rowan's silver button. Then she reached for the blue blanket. A hand caught the other end. Elena looked up. Kael stood across the bed. When were you planning to tell me? She released the blanket. I was planning to leave before breakfast. His jaw tightened. That was not what I asked. I know. Why? Elena looked toward the window. Snow drifted beyond the glass. Because every day I stay, someone decides you are weaker for allowing it. Kael's voice became quiet. I do not care. I do. He stared at her. She continued before courage failed. Your sons are watched because of me. The council is whispering. Half the court thinks I am trying to become Luna. And are you? Elena's breath caught. Kael regretted the question the moment it left him. Her eyes changed. That is unfair. Yes. You cannot command someone into belonging here. The words struck deeper than she intended. Kael went still. For years, everything in his life had remained because of duty. Guards, advisors, nobles, even loyalty sometimes felt negotiated. Elena was the first person who had stayed because she chose to. And now she was choosing to leave. His wolf pressed beneath his ribs. Stop her. Kael did not. Instead, he asked quietly, Do you want to go? Elena looked at him. That question hurt more, because the answer was no. She missed White Pine. She missed silence. But she had also started missing Kael when he left a room. She noticed when his tea went cold. She knew when he had slept badly by the shadow beneath his eyes. She had begun recognizing his footsteps. That frightened her. I don't know, she whispered. Kael's expression softened. Before he could answer, something thumped outside. Then another. Elena opened the door. Rowan stood there holding a wooden practice sword. Finn had a pillow. Milo wore a cooking pot on his head. Elena blinked. What are you doing? Guard duty, Rowan said. Finn nodded. You cannot leave. Milo lifted the pot slightly. We voted. Kael looked at Elena. Elena pressed a hand over her mouth. Is the pot necessary? Yes, Milo said. Finn was already sitting against the wall. Within 5 minutes, he fell asleep. Elena laughed so hard tears gathered in her eyes. Kael watched her. That sound. Again. The sound he had begun waiting for. The next evening, the royal dining hall was full. Elena sat farther down the table than usual. Kael noticed immediately. So did his wolf. Halfway through dinner, Lord Harrow leaned back in his chair and glanced toward her. I suppose the border stray has become comfortable. The room went silent. Elena's fingers tightened around her glass. Before she could answer, Kael set his own glass down. Softly. The sound carried farther than a shout. Every face turned toward him. Kael's amber eyes fixed on Harrow. Choose your next words very carefully. Harrow swallowed. Your Majesty, I meant no. I know exactly what you meant. Kael rose. Elena stared at him. His voice remained calm. That made it more dangerous. She saved my sons when your entire household would have ridden past them. No one moved. She gave them the only blanket she owned, NH. His gaze swept across the table. And if any person in this palace mistakes kindness for low birth again, they will answer to me. Elena's heart beat painfully hard. Kael looked at her. For one suspended second, the room disappeared. There was only his quiet anger, her scent, his, the bond pulling gently between them. Then Kael extended his hand toward the empty chair beside him. Sit here. Elena started. Everyone stared. The chair beside the Alpha King was not an ordinary seat. It was a statement, a warning, a choice. And as Elena slowly stood, Lord Garrick Voss watched from the far end of the table. His face remained calm, but beneath the table, his hand tightened around his cane, because the council had just lost control of Kael, and Garrick had finally decided Elena Vale could no longer be allowed to stay. The chair beside Kael had always been empty, not because no one was worthy of it, because everyone in Frostmere understood what it meant. A place at the Alpha King's right hand was not simply a seat. It was trust made visible. So when Elena crossed the dining hall and sat beside him, every whisper in the room seemed to disappear at once. Kael did not look at the nobles. He looked at her. Elena lowered her voice. You realize you just made this worse. For them? For me. His mouth almost curved. I considered that, and still did it. Yes. She glanced at him. That is either very brave or very stubborn. Those qualities are often confused. Elena tried not to smile. Across the table, Finn was openly grinning. Rowan kicked him beneath the table. Finn kicked back. Milo, unaware of politics entirely, leaned toward Elena and whispered, You're closer to the bread now. Elena looked at him. That is your concern? It is good bread. Kael closed his eyes briefly. The tension around the table cracked just enough for Elena to breathe again. But Lord Garrick did not smile. He watched. And Kael noticed. Later that night, Elena found Kael alone on the western balcony. Snow fell quietly beyond the stone railing, softening the dark roofs below. He had removed his formal coat. Without it, without the council, without 100 eyes measuring every movement, he looked less like a king, more like a tired man who had forgotten how to rest. Elena stepped beside him. You embarrassed an entire room for me. Kael looked toward her. They embarrassed themselves. You know what I mean. He did. Her scent drifted toward him in the cold. Pear blossom, worm milk, cedar smoke. His wolf stirred immediately. Elena noticed the change in his breathing. She was beginning to notice too much. You've been strange around me since White Pine. Kael's expression went still. That is a broad accusation. It was meant to be. He looked back over the snow. Elena waited. Kael had faced armies with less hesitation. Finally, he said quietly, My wolf recognized you that morning. Elena's heart stumbled. Recognized me? As my mate. The words settled between them. Not dramatic. Not loud. Somehow that made it heavier. Elena looked down at her hands. And you didn't tell me? No. Why? Because you had nearly frozen to death. That is fair. And because I did not trust what I felt. She looked at him. Kael's jaw tightened. I have spent most of my life obeying instinct when lives depended on it. War, territory, protection. His eyes met hers. You were different. Elena swallowed. Different how? My wolf wanted you near. A faint blush touched her cheeks. Kael continued before courage abandoned him. I wanted to know whether I did. Silence. Warm. Dangerous. Elena's voice softened. And? Kael stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough for her to feel his warmth. I missed you after White Pine. Her breath caught. I returned because of the break-in. I know. That was not the only reason. Elena's eyes lifted to his. Kael's voice became quieter. I noticed when you stopped laughing. Her expression changed. I noticed when you gave your food away and pretended you were not hungry. He glanced toward her hands. I know you rub your left thumb when you are worried. Elena immediately stopped doing exactly that. Kael almost smiled. And I know you leave the crust of your bread for Milo because he likes it. Her heart ached unexpectedly. No one had watched her that closely before. Not to judge. To remember. She tried to hide the feeling with humor. You have an alarming amount of free time for a king. I have almost none. That somehow makes it worse. Kael smiled. A real one. Elena stared. There. He sighed. Do not start. You smiled. I regret everything. She laughed softly. The sound drew him closer without permission. His hand lifted. Stopped beside her cheek. Elena did not move away. Then she whispered. Do you want me because your wolf chose me? Kael's hand lowered. The question mattered too much for an easy answer. No. Elena searched his face. My wolf recognized something before I did. He paused. But he did not teach me your laugh. Her eyes softened. He did not make me worry when you were cold. Another step closer. He did not make me jealous of Captain Elias. Elena blinked, then smiled slowly. I knew it. Kael frowned. You knew what? The apple. That apple was bruised. It was perfectly fine. It was suspicious. Elena laughed again. Kael looked offended. She leaned closer. You were jealous. I was cautious. A fruit. Of Elias. The honesty surprised both of them. Elena's smile became gentler. Their scents mingled in the winter air. The mate bond warmed beneath her skin, not demanding, waiting. Before either could move closer, a muffled sound came from behind the balcony door. Kael opened it. 3 boys fell forward in a heap. Finn landed first. Milo landed on Finn. Rowan remained standing for exactly half a second before losing his balance. Elena started. Kael started. Finn looked up. We were not listening. Rowan groaned. You are terrible at lying. Milo pointed at Kael. Did you tell her? Kael's face became dangerously calm. Bed? All 3 disappeared immediately. Elena laughed until she had to hold the railing. Kael watched her, completely helpless against the warmth spreading through his chest. Then Elena remembered something. She reached into the pocket of her dress. A tiny folded piece of fabric rested inside. She had cut it from the inner seam of the old blanket that afternoon, after noticing stitches hidden beneath the lining. Kael's expression sharpened. What is that? I found writing. Together, they unfolded the fabric beneath the balcony lantern. Tiny silver letters appeared between faded blue threads. Kael could not read the old dialect, but he knew who could. By midnight, the royal historian stood before them in the archive. His hands trembled as he translated the message. To the last daughter. Elena stopped breathing. The historian continued. When the crown forgets the truth. The room became silent. Kael looked at Elena. Elena looked at the blanket in her hands. And somewhere beyond the archive doors, an old palace bell began to ring. Lord Garrick Voss had just called an emergency session of the Royal Council. The emergency bell did not stop ringing until every member of the Royal Council had entered the chamber. Elena stood outside the great doors with the old blanket folded over her arms. For the first time since arriving at Frostmere, she wished she were back in White Pine. Back where the wind was cruel but honest. Back where no one smiled while deciding what she was worth. Kael stood beside her. Not in front of her. Beside her. She noticed that. She noticed everything about him now. The way his jaw tightened when he was angry. The way his thumb brushed once across the edge of his ring when he was worried. The way his scent sharpened into dark cedar when his wolf was close to the surface. You can still leave, he said quietly. Elena looked at him. You said that when we reached the palace. I meant it then too. And if I leave now? Kael's amber eyes held hers. I will go with you. Her heart stumbled. You have a council waiting. I have had councils waiting for years. A faint smile touched her mouth. That sounded almost rebellious. I learned from you. The great doors opened. Before Elena could answer, Lord Garrick Voss's voice carried across the chamber. Bring her in. Kael's expression turned cold. Elena glanced at him. Try not to growl. I make no promises. That almost made her laugh. Almost. They entered together. The council chamber was circular, built from pale stone beneath a domed glass ceiling. Snowlight filtered through the panes above, turning every face colorless. Garrick stood near the center. Documents covered the table before him. His eyes went immediately to the blanket. There it is, he said. Elena tightened her grip. Kael moved half a step closer. Garrick noticed. So did everyone else. The crest of Mooncrest, Garrick continued, a house convicted of treason 23 years ago. Whispers moved around the room. Elena's stomach tightened. She looked toward Kael. He did not appear surprised. That hurt. You knew. His eyes met hers. I suspected. How long? Elena. How long? Since White Pine. Her face changed. The memory came back instantly. Kael looking at the blanket. His questions about her mother. The archive. The song. All those quiet moments now carried another meaning. You should have told me. Yes. No excuse. No royal defense. Just the truth. Somehow, that made it harder to stay angry. Garrick smiled faintly. How touching. Kael turned. The room seemed to cool. Careful. Garrick ignored the warning. He opened an old record. Seraphine Mooncrest survived the purge. She escaped north and concealed her identity under the name Veil. Elena stopped breathing. Her mother, not a traitor's daughter, not a woman ashamed of her blood. A survivor. Garrick looked at Elena. You are her child. Silence settled over the chamber. Elena stared at him, then down at the blanket. Her mother had wrapped her in it, as a little girl, had repaired it by candlelight, had told her never to sell it, no matter how poor they became. Elena had thought it was sentiment. Now she understood. It was evidence. A memory. A message. Kael's voice broke the silence. And where is the proof that Mooncrest committed treason? Garrick's expression tightened. The crown records were altered. Every head turned. Kael placed several recovered archive pages on the table. The original files listed Mooncrest as witnesses in an investigation involving the death of Prince Alaric. The council erupted. Garrick's face lost color. Elena looked at Kael. He continued. The prince was not killed by Mooncrest. His eyes settled on Garrick. They discovered he had been poisoned. The room became deathly quiet. Garrick gripped his cane. That is speculation. A second voice answered from the doorway. No. Everyone turned. The elderly palace housekeeper Elena had seen weeks earlier entered slowly. Her name was Mara Finn. Her hands trembled. Her voice did not. I served House Mooncrest. Elena's breath caught. Mara looked at her. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. You have your mother's eyes. Elena could not speak. Mara approached the table. Seraphin found records proving Prince Alaric had been slowly poisoned to remove him from succession. She looked toward Garrick. By members of House Voss. The chamber exploded into voices. Garrick struck his cane against the floor. Lies. Kael's wolf surged beneath his skin. Elena felt it before she saw it. His scent darkened. His eyes flashed. She touched his wrist. One small touch. Kael went still. Her scent reached him. Pear blossom. Warm milk. Home. He looked down at her hand. The rage eased. Garrick saw it. And hated it. You see? He snapped. She controls him. Elena slowly removed her hand. Then stepped forward. No. Her voice was soft. Yet the room listened. I spent most of my life being told my mother's blood made me less worthy. She looked around the council. I lived in a broken border station. I repaired clothes to eat. People called me the daughter of a traitor before they bothered to learn my name. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. But none of that stopped me from saving 3 freezing children when I found them. Kael's eyes softened. Elena looked directly at Garrick. So, if you want to decide my value by my blood, you may. A pause. I already learned not to. Garrick's face hardened. He pulled one final parchment from the table. Then the law will decide. Kael's expression changed. Garrick read aloud. Under the old Northern Crown decree, any surviving member of a condemned bloodline must be detained until formal judgment. The guards around the chamber shifted uneasily. Elena's heart began to pound. Garrick smiled. Before sunset, Milo's crooked stuffed wolf suddenly slipped from Elena's pocket and fell to the floor. She stared at it. For courage. She remembered his little voice. Her fear did not disappear, but it became smaller. Kael stepped down from the royal platform. One step, then another, until he stood directly beside Elena. Not as king above her, as a man next to her. Garrick's smile faded. Your Majesty. Kael's voice was dangerously calm. You are invoking a law written from a lie. It remains law. The guards waited. The council waited. Elena looked at Kael. He looked back. And in that moment, everyone in Frostmere understood the same thing. The Alpha King was about to choose. The crown. Or her. The entire chamber waited for Kael to speak. He did not return to the throne. Instead, he stepped closer to Elena. That single movement changed everything. The guards noticed. The council noticed. Lord Garrick noticed most of all. Kael's voice was calm. If the law was built on a lie, then the crown will answer for the lie before it punishes the innocent. A murmur moved through the chamber. Garrick's face hardened. You would risk division for 1 Omega? Kael looked at Elena. Her old blue blanket remained folded in her arms. The same blanket she had once wrapped around 3 freezing pups while she shivered outside it. The same blanket everyone had dismissed as poor and worn. The same blanket that had carried the truth for 23 years. Kael turned back to Garrick. She risked her life for my sons before she knew who they were. His scent deepened. Dark cedar, snow-covered pine, protective instinct. She gave them warmth when she had none to spare. His amber eyes sharpened. And you ask me whether she is worth standing beside? Garrick said nothing. Mara Finn stepped forward. In her hands were the recovered Mooncrest records. The evidence was read aloud. Names, dates, payments, the slow poisoning of Prince Alaric, orders bearing the seal of House Voss. By the time the final page was placed on the table, the chamber had gone completely silent. Garrick looked suddenly older, smaller. His power had depended on everyone believing an old story. Now, the story was gone. Guards moved toward him. He lifted his chin. This kingdom will regret choosing sentiment over strength. Elena spoke before Kael could. No. Everyone looked at her. Her voice was gentle, but it carried. This kingdom nearly lost 3 children because powerful men spent too long protecting secrets. She looked at the council. My mother died with people calling her blood shameful. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. I will not let truth become another weapon. Kael watched her quietly. This was why he loved her. Not because his wolf had recognized her first. Not because fate had placed a bond between them. Because Elena could stand in a room built to make her feel small and still choose kindness without surrendering her strength. By sunset, Garrick was removed from office. The old decree against Mooncrest was suspended. Within days, the crown formally cleared the family name. But Elena did not celebrate with jewels. She returned to her room and sat beside the window with the blanket across her lap. Kael found her there after dark. No guards. No crown. Just him. You should be downstairs, Elena said. So should you. I needed quiet. Kael nodded. He understood. For a while, he simply sat beside her. That was something Elena had learned to love about him. Kael did not always fill silence. Sometimes he stayed inside it with her. Finally, she said softly, so now everyone knows who I am. Kael looked at her. Do you? Elena smiled faintly. I'm still working on that. He reached for her hand. Slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. His thumb moved across her knuckles. I want you to stay. Elena's breath caught. As your Luna? Kael shook his head. As Elena. Her eyes softened. The rest can come later. For a second, neither moved. Then Elena leaned closer. What if I say no? Kael's mouth curved. I will be extremely dignified. She raised one brow. You? Possibly for several minutes. Elena laughed. There it was. That sound he had chased without realizing it. Kael lifted her hand and pressed a quiet kiss against her fingers. The mate bond warmed between them. Not demanding. Not claiming. Choosing. Elena rested her forehead against his. I'll stay. His eyes closed. For the boys? Partly. Kael opened one eye. Only partly? She smiled. You are fishing for compliments, Your Majesty. I have had a difficult week. That earned him another laugh. Then she kissed him. Softly. No audience. No ceremony. Just warmth. Weeks later, winter still covered Frostmere. One evening, Elena found all 3 boys beneath the old blue blanket in front of the fire. Finn had stolen the largest section. Milo was asleep. Rowan was pretending not to be. Kael approached. Finn looked up. No room. Kyle stared at him. I rule 7 packs. Finn pulled the blanket tighter. Still no room. Elena laughed from the sofa. Kael looked at her. This family has become lawless. You encouraged it. I deeply regret that. He did not. Elena lifted one corner of the blanket. Come here. Kael sat beside her. The boys immediately shifted until everyone barely fit. The blanket was too small. It always had been. But somehow, they made room. Kael looked at Elena and remembered the frozen station at dawn. A lonely Omega. 3 frightened pups. 1 old blanket. She had once owned almost nothing. And still, she had shared everything. Now she had 3 children who ran toward her. A kingdom that finally knew her name. And an Alpha King who had learned that home was not the place he ruled. It was the place where someone made room for him beneath the blanket. And now, Elena and Kael's story has finally grown quiet. Are you still here with me? If you are, then maybe you understood why this story was never only about a king, 3 lost pups, or an old blue blanket. It was about what happens when people misunderstand you, judge you by someone else's mistakes, betray your trust, and still expect you to beg for a place at their table. Elena never begged. She was hurt. She was doubted. She nearly walked away because keeping her dignity mattered more than being chosen by people who had already decided who she was. That may be the quiet lesson worth carrying with us. You cannot control every rumor, every unfair opinion, or every person who fails to see your heart, but you can control what you become after it. You can leave without becoming cruel. You can feel pain without surrendering your self-respect. And you can choose yourself again before asking anyone else to choose you. If that stayed with you, write just one word in the comments: dignity. And if you enjoyed spending this time with us, a like, a share, or subscribing to the channel would be warmly appreciated.